Hey guys, it's Mr. Garby. Today's April 7th, 2020. We're in our fourth week of distance learning. You should have just taken your little multiple choice quiz summative. And this week we're going to do one lesson. We're going to continue with apps we're going to be talking about user input and strings. All right, so you're going to go into lesson 6 in unit 5. And in this, you're going to develop a simple Mad Libs app, learning to collect and process text strings as input from the user. So we're going to look at strings. A string is basically can be stored in a variable, but it's just a sequence of characters now. It doesn't really have a value like a number did. All right, so there's a little demonstration here you're going to look at on Bubble 2, and you can play around with that on how the Mad Lib worked. You're going to be creating something like this, so we're going to press run. It says, up until now, the event-driven apps you created responded to the users clicking an element or typing a number, right, using prompt num. So what if we want to do text instead? That's where strings are going to come into play. All right, so you can play with this MATLAB. All right, let's say plural noun, viruses, noun, sickness, noun, cough. Well, I guess that's also a verb. Let's go with it. Song, I will survive, verb, sneeze. Learning to drive is a tricky process. There are a few rules you must follow. Keep 2 viruses on the steering wheel at all times. Step on the sickness to speed up and the cough to slow down. Your parents will just love it if you play I Will Survive on the radio. Make sure to honk your horn when you see sneeze on the street sign. Alright, so you're going to be making a Mad Lib kind of like this. Alright? So, the first thing we're going to do is look at some code, beginning steps of making a Mad Lib. And we're going to be looking at strings. So a string is a sequence of ASCII characters, just characters that are typed out on your regular keyboard. And you can see some examples here. And all these strings, there's double quotation marks around it. And yes, that is needed. So we can store in a variable just like a number. All right. So you can also combine strings. We've done this with the plus sign, and we can continue to do this if you want to combine multiple strings to create longer ones. So what you're going to do here is input words of this Mad Lib. You're going to input your own words. So actually, whoops. If you just run this from the original state, the code that it gave you, you'll see the console logs is just giving it to you the text on the bottom. You'll see that it's incomplete because we have plural noun, verb. Those are variable names that we established over here. You'll see right now in the debug console that it's just blank because we don't have anything in here stored, right? It's just blank space. So let's say our plural noun is nails. Let's just say verb socialize, adjective, wet, and another adjective. Let's go with snotty. So you'll see how now those words are in your console log. All right. So the next bubble is really about a little bit of fixing messed up code. All right. So double quotes, you need them. All right. So and that's if you want to do a string. So if you run this code right here, let's take a look. It says console.log reminders. Console.log, we have 1.finished project for Monday in quotations. Console.log 2, practice script for presentation. Console.log tryouts after school. When we run this, it says line 3. there's an error. So what is the error here on line 3? Well, line 2 worked because they were in double quotes. So let's start here, run it again, and now it's saying line 4. So what's the error here? We have a double quotation in the beginning, but not in the end. Now it's saying line 1. What's the issue here? It says we can't figure out what reminders is. Maybe you meant a string reminders with quotes. Okay, right now it's reading this as a variable. We never established that variable, right? So we want it as a string. All right. So now we're just going to look at the element that we can put using design mode into our app, the text input element. All right, so text input, if you click design, can be found right here. So what you have so far is just the text, name and age. That's just regular text. Or it might be a button, it might just be a text area. I don't know, but it could be either. What we're going to do is add 2 text elements to the program. One for the name and one for the age. So we want the person who is running this app to put in their name and their age. Alright, so we're going to give the elements descriptive and meaningful IDs. We're going to set their default text to prompt the user for their name and age, and then we can compare to below. This is really what we want. So if I go to text input and I drag that, take this text input and I drag that. Now what it wanted was for it to have meaningful ID. So if I just click back here, the ID is text input 1. I'm just going to call it name input. And it also wanted to prompt for the name. So under placeholder, say, what is your name? What is your name? And then age, let's change that to age input. And placeholder, how old are you? All right. So we don't have the code yet for this to really do anything. It's just so that it's possible to type in here. What is my name? Billy. How old are you? 68. So that is basically all we can do right now. It's just getting used to putting in text. So you go ahead and try that. So what we're going to be doing in bubble 6 is actually using that text input. On the last bubble, we just kind of learned how to enter it, how to have the user enter it. And now, as a programmer, we're going to figure out how to get that information that they enter. Okay? So we're going to be using this UI control, get text. Okay? And you'll see the parameters ID. So you can use a get text command just like a string within a console log or write command. So it's almost like set text, but you're just taking it from the input. So read the documentation for get text, add an event handler to the submit button that fires when your button is clicked. Inside the event handler, place code that will log the name, your user input, log the name your user input to the console. Okay, so you see this little icon. It means that it's what you did before is going to carry over, so you'll see my code here still. So, like we said, we're going to add an event handler so that when we click the submit button, so I'm going to say click here, the name of the submit button is submit button, and inside we're going to place code that will log the name your user input to the console. So whatever they put for their name, we want to pop up down here. So we're going to go console.log. We're going to go to get text. And we want to know what text are we grabbing. Well, we want to grab the name. And if you forgot what the ID is for that, you can go back to design and just click the text box. And this is the name. So I go back to code and I find name input. And then we're going to test it. So we're going to run it, enter our name, Joe. When I click submit, it should take that text that's inside this text box, which is Joe, and display it in the debug console. And it does. So now we're going to save this input for later. Alright, so we're going to do this by using a variable. So create two variables inside your event handler to store the age and name of the user. Use getText to update the value stored in each of the variables, and change your console log statements to use your variable instead of getText. We're just going to drag this out. When we click the submit button, that's when we want all this to start running, and we're going to create those variables. So let's go. Okay, so let's start with name. I'll just use what they used. We're going to call it username. How do we know what we want stored in that variable? Well, they entered it here. So we're going to go back to getText. We're going to get the text from here. And the name of this, it says right there, even if you don't go back to the design, actually, if you just scroll over it, is name input. And then we'll do the same thing for our second variable, which is just the age. So right now it's getting the text, it's saving it to variables, which means we can save it for later. So the only reason we're using the console log statement so that we can see that the variables are actually doing what they think we're doing. We want to display variable username. It does not need to be in quotations because this is a variable. It is not a string itself. Right? We're calling a variable, and that variable may contain a string, but the variable name itself is not a string. So let's run. What is your name? Jack. How old are you? I am -1. All right. There's Jack. He's -1. Okay. So now what we're actually going to do is put in some sort of message here. Okay. So far we've been outputting our messages in the console. Now we're going to actually do it on the screen. But we're going to do it with the UI element called text area. So you'll see here, I went down, put in text area. I gave it a meaningful ID. I called it text output, and there's nothing there right now. All right. So what we're going to do, let's go back to our code. We're going to add this text area, like I just did. Create a variable inside your event handler called user message. So create a variable. So be this, and they want it to be called user message. Hold the full message that will be sent to the user. So it would be like hello. Oh, but this is a string, right? So I need quotations, and then I'm going to put in the name. The name is not a string, it's a variable which contains a string. So we're just going to put in username. Don't forget that plus sign. How are you? I know you. Okay. I know you're close quotations plus put in user age plus quotation years old. Close period quotations. All right, this is kind of hard to see. Let's make sure we have all our plus signs. We have all our quotations around strings, but not around variables. So if you were to run this right now, nothing would happen. It's just all we did was establish the variable. We didn't tell it to do anything yet. So we put those strings together in a variable. Now we're going to use setText to place your user message in this area. Now before I do that, I need it to actually be written on the screen. So we're going to go write text. And the text we're going to write is just the user message. So let's just test this out again. What is your name? Joe. What is your age? 3. So I'm going to press submit. And nothing happens. Is there an error? Let me look at this again. Joe 4. There's no error. So the problem here is that there are parentheses. I think that's the problem. Let's try it again. Joe 3 or 2, whatever. Okay, so yes, that was the problem. So you see the text up here. What's wrong with that? Well, first of all, there's no spaces. How do we do spaces? We put a space after the word hello. We can put a space if we want between Joe and how. And then between your and to. And then between 2 and years. So that's the first problem. The second problem is it's not where we want it. So that's where we're going to use set text. Set text just tells us where we want the text to go. The ID, where do we want this to actually go? We want it to go here, and I call that text output. What is the actual text we want to put there? It's user message. So let's see what happens. Hey, yeah, so I'm not sure why, but it looks like it's only running properly when I'm showing text. I know this has been an issue before, and it's been an issue with other teachers that I've talked to that teach us. So when you want to actually write the message, you just go write whatever variable you used. You can still do this in block form, but when you run it, go back to text. When you want to set your text to this text box, the first parameter is what is the name of the text box. Okay, you'll see the drop down here, and then the second parameter is what should we write, and I just want the variable user message. So when I run this, what is your name? Joe. How old are you? 3. Submit. Hello, Joe. How are you? I know you're 3 years old. Okay, so let's see what happens if we took away the right, because you see it come up twice. Joe, 21, submit. Yeah, so we don't need the right. We don't need to put right. We just put set text, and that will put the text wherever you ask it to in the text output. All right. I helped you get through those bubbles. Bubble 9 is just about cases, uppercase, lowercase, and then you're going to be making your Mad Lib game. So that's really what your assignment is, to make your Mad Lib game. So I hope this helps, and I hope that you will complete this, and I'll be able to do your Mad Libs out. And this is due on Friday. That would be April 10th. Okay, have a great week, guys.